Today we have Miss L, Uwe, and Hila.
Hey, I'm always here.
It's nighttime, so the lighting's a little off, but I'm going to be telling a story today. Actually, this video will be the first in a series of videos on Japan. If you'd like to see my thoughts on any of these subjects, make sure to subscribe. This first video is going to be a story, and it's going to be about, you know what, there is a nice way to say this. Memory lane, a.k.a. piss alley. Let me preface this by saying I spent my summer in Japan. I was there for 2 months doing some bioengineering research.
Bioengineering
Research.
God, you're such a nerd.
Yeah, it was study abroad. It was awesome. Oh my god. I love Japan. My dream while I was in Japan was to visit Tokyo because I love cities and Tokyo's like, you know, a city. So it fits. Where I was staying was in Osaka, which is about 10 hours on highway bus from Tokyo. The easiest way to travel between them is bullet train, but I couldn't afford it, so I ended up taking the highway bus. Yeah, I was telling my professors and like my peers about how I wanted to travel to Tokyo, and they set up this weekend that I could have off so that I could travel. Before traveling there, I did some research. I looked at brochures about like cool places in Tokyo where tourists normally miss, underground scene in Tokyo, cool places to go for cheap, you know, like that type. Like I was typing in that in Google. And one of the things that kept coming up on every page was this alley in Tokyo called Memory Lane, or Omoide Yokocho. I definitely messed that up. That's what it's called in Japanese. It translates in English to Memory Lane, but it has a name in English as well. And the name in English is Piss Alley. Literally, like urine, piss alley. Now, why did this pop up in all this, like, in the travel blogs and all this stuff? Well, what they said on the websites was like, Omoide Yokocho, piss alley is a must-see because you can eat like a true Japanese person, and because the food there is just so crazy, so bizarre. There's one restaurant where you can eat like fried, like pig testicles and salamander and like crazy stuff. I have a very adventurous palate. So I was like, if I'm going to go to Tokyo, I'm going to make this a once-in-a-lifetime thing to try this food.
You went to Piss Alley to eat testicles.
Well, not specifically for the test. I would have probably eaten the salamanders if things had gone according to plan.
You would have eaten them, though. The testicles.
Probably the salamander.
Oh, the testicles.
Probably the salamander.
Okay, I think that's settled.
Not that sounds any better.
I think
but
that's settled.
The restaurant where all this crazy food is was called Asadachi. That was the name of the restaurant. In English, that translates into morning wood. Like, literally, like, the same meaning and everything. It's not like, you know, a different, like, no, like, that's what the name of the restaurant is. So when I found out about this place, it's just so peculiar, so odd and different that I just, like, had to check it out, like, you know? And if it's affordable, might as well. If it's on the way in the middle of Tokyo, like, I might as well check it out. So I made plans to visit Asadachi. And I would joke around with all my friends in Japan, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to Tokyo, got some Asadachi in my mouth, oh my god, you know, like, making a stupid joke like that. And of course they did their, like, you know, nervous laugh, because my humor's weird, but whatever. The day comes, I travel to Tokyo for that weekend, like, on my own, actually. I wasn't, okay, so you can see there's like a variety of things that didn't go according to plan, or like a variety of things that are contributing to the way this story ended. Just so you know, I'm aware of these factors, but I couldn't do much to change them. One of them was that I don't speak Japanese. I was in Japan for the summer. I learned some Japanese, but I couldn't read anything still. And I could only speak like, where is this place? Or like, I'd like this please. Like really basic stuff. And even then with like a super strong accent. I didn't have international cell service, like data on my phone either. My phone was basically a Wi-Fi only device. The way I'm traveling around Japan is I'm looking things up when I'm connected to Wi-Fi on Google Maps, and then I'm basically following the route. I'm following screenshots of the route. But that's difficult when you're talking about Tokyo, where train stations are colossal, and if you're walking from one train station to another location, Google doesn't know which exit of the train station you're taking, or which entrance to the other train station or other location you're taking, so things can get confusing really quick. Add on top of that where like you'll look on the map like, oh, I need to make a right after 3 streets, and then you'll look down one alley and there's like, it's a really small alley and you're like, does that count? and then you see the next one and it's twice that width, but there's a car in it. And you're like, does that count? And then you see one that's the next one and it's like an actual like boulevard, like a street. And you're like, is this the first one or the third one? And then it throws things off. So navigating around Tokyo became difficult quickly. When it came time for me to find memory lane, I got lost. Surprise. Here's a picture of where I was when I thought I was close to memory lane. Take note of this picture. I walked around the area for probably another 2 hours. I couldn't find this alley that people were talking about. I just found like normal stores. And when I was walking around, I walked up and down that main street for like a mile in each direction. All the while it's the summer and I'm carrying this huge backpack. So I'm getting really frustrated really quickly. And all the while I'm also seeing like restaurants, like actual like restaurants I recognize, like, you know, Burger King and like stuff that I want to eat. But then I was like, no, like I'm hungry, but I saved my like hunger for Asadachi. I'm not gonna come all this way and then not eat that Asadachi. I'm getting that Asadachi. Fast forward to like 2 hours later, I was exhausted and frustrated and sweaty and hungry. I was like, forget it, I'm gonna take a taxi. I'm gonna find someone and ask them to take me there. The reason I didn't do this earlier was because I was on a really tight budget. A taxi that wasn't the first solution I thought of because a taxi costs money. And my budget for lunch that day was like $7. I was trying to save that money. You know, I ended up giving in and I tried to hail a taxi. Didn't go well, surprise. I'd never hailed a taxi before, so I don't know what the procedure is. It took a couple tries and then no one pulled over for me. So I was like, okay. So I just walked back towards where I came from. And then I found a taxi driver leaning up against his taxi. And I was like, this guy has no choice. Like, I got you. So I walk up to him and I'm like, sumimasen, excuse me. And then he looks at me, oh. And I'm like, so granted, in hindsight, I understand his response. I asked him, Asadachi doko desu ka? Which translates into, where's Morningwood? Okay?
Oh.
So his response was a big X in my face. That was his response. A big X in my face. I guess I should have seen that coming, but at the same time, he's supposed to know like the local geography. So like I figured he'd know about this famous restaurant. I decided I would tweak my approach. I get it, you know. Some random tourist asks you where's Morningwood. Weird question. So I was like, fine. So he didn't give me a ride, so I just kept on walking. Then I approached a red light and there was a taxi stopped at that red light. And I was like, perfect, another guy that has no choice. I get in the car and then he's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, Omoide Yokocho. I still feel like I'm mispronouncing that. But he was like, oh, I know where that is. Here's my face of being, I took a picture of myself. Here's a selfie of me being frustrated in a taxi because I was spending money that I shouldn't have been spending on a taxi. But anyways, he drove me by. He was like, here's Omoide Yokocho. It was exactly where I was when I thought I was by it. But I can't read kanji. So the sign said, memory lane. And I read kanji that I can't read. Under that, in tiny letters, there was memory lane. In tiny letters. So of course I missed it. So I had just been walking around for 2 hours for nothing. Whatever. So I'm like, well, at least I'm here. The only mission is to find Asadachi. I'm in memory lane, now I just need to find Morningwood. And I understand, especially considering the taxi driver's reaction, now I'm a little more careful about how I ask people and how I say it. I'm walking around memory lane, and then each time I'm going around, if I see a guy on his own, I figured I would approach him and like one-on-one, ask him and apologize immediately, but like try to explain that it's a restaurant, you know, and like, but my Japanese isn't good enough for that. So I figured I would like try to, you know, get people to like empathize with me and like maybe someone will help me out, especially since I'm in memory lane now. I thought that was a bulletproof technique because I thought it was famous to some extent.
So if somebody came to you from a different country, a Japanese person, and came to America, to Florida where you're from, and asked you something like that to your face with a straight face, what would you do?
I would definitely not put an X in their face.
Now, but before, what would you have done?
I don't know what I would do. I'd maybe put it in my phone. I don't know. Like, But if I'm a taxi driver, like, then I would try to figure it out, yeah. So I'm walking around memory lane a couple times, and I don't see any, like, guys on their own that I could approach. Let me show you a couple pictures of memory lane, just so you know what it looks like. The name in English is Piss Alley, okay? We're not walking through Beverly Hills here. This is an alley with, like, extremely cramped restaurants, dirty aesthetic. That's what they're selling, is like that street vendor real food vibe. I didn't feel uncomfortable asking for morning wood. I'll say that much. Problem is, I'm walking around, I don't see anybody on their own, so I'm gonna have to walk into one of these super cramped, like, I hesitate to call them restaurants, but like shacks where people are making food, and ask them where there's another shack where people are making, like, I felt bad, you know? Imagine walking into McDonald's asking for Burger King, except they're family-owned businesses or something. You know, like, I don't know. So I decide to build up the courage and walk into one of these places and ask them, where's Asadachi? I walk in, I look at the chef looks at me, the whole restaurant goes quiet, and I gesture for him to come closer to me. He comes close. This is the first person I ask. And I'm like, Asadachi doko desu ka? Very quietly, like almost in his ear. Where's Morningwood? He looks at me extremely confused. And I repeat myself, Asadachi doko desu ka? And then he says, lunch doko desu ka? And I'm like, no, Asadachi doko desu ka? Like a little louder and like clearer. He's like, ramen doko desu ka? And I'm like, we're not going anywhere with this. I like start to walk out, and then he like calls me back, and then he has like a bunch of ramen in his hand. He's like, ramen doko desu ka? And I'm like, arigatou gozaimasu. And I just like walk out, and it's awkward. So I'm like, well, that sucked. I keep walking around, and same thing happens. I go into someone's like little restaurant, like I ask them, Asadachi doko desu ka? And either they give me a big X, or they just kind of like ignore my question or don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not getting anywhere. Each time that I walk around, there's this super old lady in one of the restaurants, and she's sitting in the very back in like a stool or something. But each time she sees me walking down the alley, she gets up from her chair and walks up super slowly. I could hear the joints like cracking with each step, and she would like pick up a menu, hold it open as I'm walking by and say, barbecue? I would just say, daijoubu desu, no thank you, daijoubu, and then just keep walking by. But she did this literally every single time that I walked by. And I'm not gonna ask her where Asadachi is, because that would be even more awkward. So each time I'm walking by, I'm asking a person in a restaurant, Asadachi doko desu ka? They're not giving me any answers. Then I keep walking around, barbecue? And then I keep walking around, ask someone else, keep walking around, barbecue? That's what keeps happening. And then one of those times I'm walking around, and I see a couple black guys. And I'm like, oh my god, like, salvation! And I'm like,
help a brother out.
They come up to me and they ask me for directions. They're like, do you know where Memory Lane is? And I'm like, that's where we're standing. We're currently in it. And they're like, no way. Oh, awesome. Okay. What brings you to Japan? And we start conversation, and I tell them about Osaka, and they're like from Ethiopia. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for this restaurant called Asadachi, but I'm not having any luck. And they're like, oh, I have data on my phone. I could look for it if you want. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So they plug it in on the phone, and they say, oh, it says it's 100 feet away. And I'm like, what? Like, I've literally asked everyone here where Asadachi is. Okay, I keep my cool, and I'm like, thanks so much. They tell me, like, the location on Google Maps. So I run by, the barbecue lady gets up, holds the menu, barbecue, daijoubu desu. I walk by her, I go around to this red storefront, and I can't read anything because it's in kanji, but that's where Google said to go. I walk up to two cool looking guys who are like in chef outfits standing outside, and I'm like, sumimasen, Asadachi doko desu ka? Like really hopeful. And they're like, Asadachi? Asadachi? And then they give me big X like that. What the heck? So.
Wait, so was that the place?
I'm not even sure. I don't even know. I think it was.
Why didn't you just go in? I mean, what do you have to lose at this point? You could have just walked in and be like,
honestly, I have no idea.
Literally, you could be like, okay, and then be like, okay, and be like, I don't know where.
Well, I mean, there's stuff where it's like, I get tourist privileges, you know, like if I walk in, I leave, like, that's a stupid tourist thing that I could do and get away with, but like, I don't know, I didn't want to commit to a restaurant if it wasn't what I was looking for, you know.
But it was.
I wasn't sure of that.
95%.
I don't know, because I asked the two people who looked like they worked there, and they like had no idea what I was talking about.
Oh, you have an accent.
But I mean,
Sorry, Josh, getting you riled up, my bad.
It's okay. I end up just going to that barbecue lady's restaurant. I walk in, and then she gives me the menu. I look over the menu, and there's not even barbecue on the menu. There's not even barbecue on the menu. She's been walking up and saying barbecue every single time. There's not even barbecue on the menu. So I'm like, okay. So I try to look for the closest thing to barbecue. And her place sold like kebabs. I got like a pork and like green pepper kebab or something like that. From the picture, I didn't think it would fill me up either. So I was like in a position where it's like, I sat here already though, like, So I tell her, "Koreo kudasai," excuse me, I'd like this please. And then as I point to it, she flips to the front of the menu and points at a paragraph in English. And the paragraph says, the minimum amount you can purchase is a dinner meal and a beverage and an appetizer and a cover charge. In Piss Alley. I'm in Piss Alley, and that is the first time I paid. That's the only time in Japan that I paid for a cover charge for anything in Piss Alley. I ended up spending $13 at that place. My budget was like $5 for lunch, and that plus a taxi was like 20 bucks, like way over budget. It didn't fill me up. It wasn't even good. Side note, it had edamame. I'd never eaten or seen edamame before in my life. So I ate the whole thing. I've never seen it before. Like, I never encountered it before that. She was very surprised by that. She was like, and like, she showed me how to eat it. And I was like, oh, okay. She did help me with like, how to eat edamame. But like, in comparison to like, everything else, that didn't save Piss Alley for me.
To her, it was barbecue.
Maybe. I ended up going to another restaurant to actually eat like a real lunch that'll fill me up. On top of that, I was so mad. And I have pictures of my angry face of that too. Here's my face. So, that was one of the most frustrating things that happened to me in Tokyo, was my visit to Omoide Yokocho. Do I recommend it for anybody to travel there? No. Go to Odaiba. Go to Yokohama. Do not go to Piss Alley. I do not recommend Memory Lane.
Never went there.
I never went there, yeah.
You went to the Piss Alley, but not the manga museum.
I know.
Come on, Josh.
Exactly.
Where are your priorities?
You're right. That's my story about my interesting travel experience. Comment what you thought. And subscribe for more Japan videos. Adios, amigos. Sayonara. I don't know. No. Mata ne. Mata ne. See you. Goodbye.
I never heard this story in so much detail. Oh my god, why did you just leave?
How much you want to drink?